Hi, everyone. Welcome back. We are in week 3 of the Rooted in the Word series here. In this week's reading, I wanted to highlight two specific passages, Psalm 8 and Matthew 13. So first, let's move into Psalm 8. When I look at your heavens, the work of your fingers, the moon and the stars, which you have set in place, what is man that you are mindful of him, and the Son of Man that you care for him? When you look at the heavens, what do you see? There's two predominant views there. We have a religious view, it was created, and then we have the atheistic view or scientific view, is that it all kind of just happened. So let's kind of look at the atheist first. So they're gonna say that the universe started as a singularity. A singularity is an infinitely small point of infinite mass and infinite temperature. The entire universe is condensed down into something the size of an atom itself, basically. The sheer volume of mass in such a small point theoretically breaks space-time. So the infinite mass in an infinitely small point is itself outside of space-time, meaning that it would have no beginning. There would be nothing before the singularity because there was no time before the singularity. Then, for some unknown reason that we can't explain, the predominant theory is the Big Bang, which the singularity for some reason broke down, it fractured, however you want to say it, and exploded into the universe that we see. An atheist really does kind of see, they won't put it this way, but a virgin birth of the universe. There was a singularity that was always there, and it caused itself to happen. That's where I would put it as a virgin birth. An uncaused reasoning to be everything. I, as a Christian, as a theist, if you want to put it that way, I see a divine creator. I see that God, who himself is outside of space-time, much like the singularity here, would be the cause. So I have a reason for the cause. The universe expanding into everything, Big Bang, as we would put it. I just see that as God saying, let there be light. I kind of imagine God has a pretty booming voice that might sound much like a bang, but crucially, the difference is this would explain a cause. As Aristotle would put it, we have the unmoved mover, the first mover, something to initiate the first moving, because as Newton's first law of motion, an object at rest stays at rest unless acted upon by an outside force. So if we just rewind the clock back, keep going back, eventually we get to a point where motion has to start. With God, there is a cause for that motion. A common objection from an atheist would be, well, if God created the universe, who created God? A believer saying, well, God just always existed. They don't accept that answer. Or just God is mysterious, I don't know. they also won't accept that answer. But if we flip it back to the singularity, what caused the singularity, they can say it's outside of space-time, so therefore it always existed, because once the Big Bang happened was when time started. Or they will say science hasn't figured that out yet, which is just a fancy way of saying I don't know. So I just kind of think it's funny that they kind of have this double standard there. So now that we did a brief overview of the beginning of the universe, now we have to talk about the observer. So I'm standing outside looking up the stars. How did I get here? Back to atheists. We created the universe, fast forward a few billion years, and now we have the solar system and everything we see, but we don't have any life. Here we see random chance is kind of what they believe in. Through billions of years, we have an ocean that has undergone a bunch of chemical reactions, and now we have proteins, enzymes, and all the building blocks of life floating around the ocean. That's where the term primordial soup kind of comes from. So kind of putting this in perspective, the simplest living organism that we know of capable of self-reproduction is JCVI Sin 3.0, which was created in 2016. Yes, created because it was built in a lab. As I quote from their website, the new minimal synthetic cell contains only 531,000 base pairs and just 473 genes, making it the smallest genome of any self-reproducing organism. So what are these base pairs? That is basically DNA. DNA is, when we do DNA sequencing, it comes out with a printout of A, T, C, and G to map out the DNA. So that is a string of letters, 531,000 characters long. So if we do some math, assume word count of roughly 5 characters per word, that comes out to just over 100,000 words. If we kind of translated that into word count in something our minds can understand. To put it another way, that would be randomly typing on your keyboard 500,000 characters, spaces, punctuation, and all, and accidentally writing To Kill a Mockingbird. And that's just the manuscript itself. That's so just the DNA itself, not counting the paper, the cover, the glue, the stitching, and everything that holds it all together. Because a strand of DNA is useless unless it's inside of a cell. It needs the cell membrane, the cover, and all the other things holding it together to make it work. Won't work by itself as life. So that's kind of where the breakdown for me happens with science, because I'm not gonna lie, evolution makes a lot of sense to me in my brain, where over millions and billions of years we have genetic mutations that cause certain advantages and disadvantages, where the survival of the fittest happens, and the ones who survive pass on their working genes, which then outcompetes the ones that have the disadvantage. Given a long enough time frame, that makes sense to me. But once again, we rewind the clock. The beginning of life is yet again another virgin birth that science doesn't have an explanation for currently. And once again, they'll be happy to point out science hasn't figured it out yet. And they just go on it with faith. As a Christian, I see a divine creator. Once he created the universe and everything in it. He looked at everything and said, this is good, but it was missing something. And then this is when God took some soil in his hands, molded it in his image, got face to face, and breathed life. We have a cause for life. Now that we have man, we lived in communion with God. We had a personal face-to-face relationship. He walked with us, talked with us, and he gave us free reign in the Garden of Eden. But that only happened for, chapter and a half, 2 chapters. Then man broke the one rule that God gave us, and we ate from the tree. We rejected God's commands, and by doing so, sin entered the world, sin entered us, and we could no longer live in such tight communion with God because God can't abide in sin. So we had to be cast out of the garden, but God loved us and kept pursuing us throughout the generations, but humanity kept rejecting him time and time again until God became flesh himself, came down to earth, was born of a virgin so that he could live a perfect, sinless life, just to die on a cross to be a sacrifice for our sins. He loved us so much that he gave his only son as a sacrifice for all of humanity, so that anyone who believes in him can once again have a relationship with God. God, in his almighty glory, came down onto this little blue marble in the vast sea of the universe to die for us. This is kind of what amazes me in this passage. What is man that you were mindful of him, and the Son of Man that you cared for him? So that's just putting in perspective. God has no reason to care for us, really. But he could just wipe the slate clean and start over anytime he wanted. But he loves us so much that he wants to have that relationship. He's pursuing us. And it's on us to accept it, to accept the relationship and live in faith. The choice is kind of clear to me. An atheist requires faith. They won't call it faith, they'll call it science. But they require faith in at least 2 virgin births, the virgin birth of the universe and the virgin birth of life in the world. And the cold logic of randomness and random events stacking on top of each other for millions and billions of years. And the believer requires faith as well, but we only have to believe in one virgin birth, Christ. And we believe that we are purposely created by a God who loves us. So where do you put your faith? To transition, as we saw, God created man from soil that he formed and breathed life into, which brings us to Matthew 13 here, which is the parable of the sower. I kind of think this whole reading plan, this is kind of the inspiration for the title, Rooted in the Word. So in this parable, a sower went out to sow, and he sowed some seed that fell along the path, and the birds came and devoured them. Other seeds fell on rocky ground, where they did not have much soil, and immediately they sprang up, but since they had no depth of soil, When the sun rose, they were scorched, and since they had no root, they withered away. Other seeds fell among the thorns, and the thorns grew and choked them out. Other seed fell on the good soil and produced grain, some 100-fold, some 60, some 30. So this is kind of talking about our belief and our knowledge of God's word. Kind of to break it down, the path is hard packed from where travelers are walking. Travelers, donkeys, horses, it gets hard packed. So when this seed falls on the path, it cannot take root at all. It's hard packed. It's like landing on stone. There's nowhere for the roots to go. This is the person who doesn't receive the message, doesn't receive the word. Basically, it's just in one ear, out the other. No roots are planted. It doesn't take root in your soul, in your heart. Rocky ground. So this is, it's got some soil on it, but ultimately it's got rocks underneath. So this is someone who hears the word, hears the message of the gospel, receives it in their soul, but because they lack understanding, the roots spread out, they sprout, but they don't go very deep. So when the sun comes out, it scorches it, it withers, and it dies. So this is in everyday life. That's just trials and tribulations. The storm of life comes and knocks you over, or long drought comes and you don't have any water and you wither up and die. Spiritual death, not the belief dies, not the person dies. Then this person is kind of caught up in the emotions of the event. So this is where like someone goes to a big revival, a big church event, gets caught up in the emotions, and becomes a believer there, but will shortly after kind of fall away because they have no depth there. The seed that goes amongst the thorns, they once again receive the gospel, but once again is kind of superficial. They receive it, but the cares of the world choke it out. So this is where they, as Pastor Chris so eloquently put it the other week, the 4 P's of the world, so power, possessions, popularity, and pleasure. So these are the cares of the world that, if we're not careful, can choke out our faith, because we put that on a pedestal above God. When we care about money more than we care about God, we put money above God, and that diminishes our faith and can lead to one falling away. So we gotta be careful to keep things ordered, God first, and then everything else below it. The good soil is, this is what we all aspire to be. The roots have plenty of room to go deep so that when the storms of life come, doesn't knock you down. You can withstand. When the droughts, spiritual season of dryness comes, you got deep roots that are rooted in God's promises to keep you grounded and keep you fed, so that we can spiritually survive. And this one also points out that because our roots grow deep and we are spiritually fed, that should produce fruits. So this is the good works that we do, which all believers should be doing, giving and caring for those in need, volunteering with our time, spreading the gospel itself, and just, trying to be a good example, and trying to be as Christ-like as we can be. So, what kind of soil are you? You cannot be the good soil without understanding. You can't fully understand without getting into the Word. This reading plan is a great place to start, which I will link it in the description here. Use this reading plan as a shovel to dig up the good soil, pack it in good, and just cultivate your garden so you can be deeply rooted. Love God, love people.